Well, hello there and welcome aboard. This is Wesley Smith with Tree Service Marketing Profits Podcast, treeservicedigital.com. And we've got another expert interview lined up today for Corey Parsons with Rogue Tree Solutions. I'll let him introduce himself in just one second. But if you're watching this as a replay on YouTube, go ahead and like and subscribe to our channel. We've got lots of marketing tips, tricks, and hacks coming up, as well as more expert interviews lined up that really help you kind of see the business as it is, maybe in your future or where you are today. So if you're on the podcast, go ahead and subscribe to your favorite podcast player with a Spotify, Apple. We're on all the major ones, but I'm super stoked. Today we have Corey Parsons. He's the president of Rogue Tree Solutions, and he's in the Ohio market. Corey, welcome aboard, and thanks so much for sharing today.
Hey, I really appreciate that introduction, and it's a privilege to be on.
Thanks so much for sharing. It helps a lot of other business owners out there. You know, people are in various stages of their business, right? They're getting started. They're maybe just have gotten started. Maybe they've been in business 10 years and they're not quite to where they want to be. So having business owners like you on the podcast just really helps, man. It really helps hear from other people. Well, just to get started, kind of tell us a little bit about maybe, you know, how you got started in the tree service industry, when you started your business, what area of the country you're in, and things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I was kind of, if you want to say, born into the industry. I never thought that this is what I would be doing. My old man was, he ended up retiring from, they're the largest tree company in the world. They're mainly utility line clearance. He was with them 41 years. So pretty much, man, from the time I can remember all the way through, that's what he did. But I always seen it and was like, man, there's no way I'm ever going to do trees. And then right out of school, I kind of went a different route, quickly realized that it wasn't for me. And then Pops called me one day and he's like, hey, I just need someone with a strong back and we need some guys to go to work. So that's kind of how I got into the industry. At first I'm like, man, I just don't think this is going to be for me. And then here we are, own business and going from there. But I really liked the atmosphere where we worked. Like I said, it was a utility line clearance company, but there was just a lot of things that I wanted to kind of do differently that I wasn't able to, just the red tape of corporate, the corporation of that size. And so my business partner, he actually, he started the initial thought process and the initial business of Rogue. He really had no experience, what I would consider experience doing trees. He's a medical professional and kind of got involved with it and then started the business. And then a few months into it, was like, I just don't think this is going to work out. We met one night over a couple of beers and I was still with the other company and I had another smaller company that I had on the side. And he was just the normal complaints of a new business and all the struggles that comes with it. And you have the struggles from the business, but then you have the struggles too of actually doing the work. And if you're not in tune with the safety and all the OSHA rules, and then it even goes into the leadership of hiring, like you're just against the wall on every side of it. So he was like, look, I think I'm just going to cancel this whole thing and I'm gonna go back into nursing. And I was like, well, let's kind of talk about this. And he was like, well, he's like, you should just come on. He's like, all you've ever done is trees. And we talked about it and kind of gave it a trial run for a few weekends. And just the first couple of years, man, it honestly was just for fun. It was a way to earn a little bit of extra cash here and there. And then it quickly started to develop and turn into something much bigger than I think either one of us had anticipated. So I had to make a decision, which was tough. I had just had my first son, and
I like that kind of motivation, having a baby, man.
Well, it was scary just because, I was with the previous company. I was there at that time, like 9 years into it. I had full retirement, like everything was set up how kind of we're taught, right? Like we're taught from little, like you got to get into somewhere and you got to follow kind of in between these lines and get a retirement. And then that's just what you do.
100%.
So I had to sit there and definitely make some decisions. So I decided, I was like, man, I think I just got to do this. So jumped in with both feet without really much of a safety net. And honestly, the rest is history.
That's awesome, man. So you started off with your pops, kind of just learning kind of the day to day, right? Of, tree trimming and pruning around line clearance and things like that.
Yep.
Put them in the chipper truck, finishing cleaning out the job, all that stuff. So you learn the ropes there. And I want to go back to another thing that you said that was powerful. And a lot of people are in that specific time of their business where they're just getting started. The way I like to look at it or kind of describe it too, it's like you've seen the guy like the strongman competitions, right? They got the rope tied to their chest and they're trying to pull an airplane. One of them is a guy trying to pull an airplane. So to get started, man, it's a ton of work, right? I mean, you're just pulling, struggling, trying to get that airplane to start moving. And once that thing starts moving, the momentum starts building, the wheels start turning, and it's almost like you're going uphill for a while, but then it flattens out and then you're going downhill and it gets much easier as you go. And that's kind of just like a business is when you first get started, right? It's just, you don't know what you don't know. You've never been there before. And you guys were, or your partner, maybe not yourself, but your partner, you're kind of looking at throwing in the towel because it's very tough when you first get started with a business. Yeah. It's not for the faint of heart starting a business. That's for sure.
It's not. And that's, I have people from pretty much probably the last like 3 to 4 years across the northeastern part of the country reach out to me, whether they're in, arboriculture, landscaping, whatever it is, and just picks my brain and questions. And, because you got the struggles of starting a business, but then like you just said, then you start picking up momentum. So if your business isn't structured properly, that momentum can be just as detrimental as not moving at all. So if it starts moving too fast, then that's where your product starts to diminish. You start losing your relationships with your customers. And then that stress turns into employee issues, right? So then you start having turnover. And then now you've got this other giant problem kind of spinning out of control. And it to me, from working with other businesses and helping people along the way, I've seen that's probably can be more of a headache and more of an issue to close your business than actually trying to get it started in the beginning. So it's definitely, man, there's so many things to it, but I don't know. I enjoy it. I really like, I don't look at problems like most people. To me, when I get a problem presented to me, it's a smile and it's like, all right, how are we going to push through this?
Absolutely. And like you said, if it starts taking off, the momentum builds, then you got the problem of over promising and then under delivering. You don't want to do that. That gets you a bad rap in the area. So it's a juggling act when you first start, and it's about hiring the team. I mean, we're in the process of growing ourselves. So hiring the team is the next challenge. And that's a whole different set of skills than doing the work, So, but awesome, man. Great stuff. So what about, did you guys get started and kind of start moving on up and getting that momentum built? Was it 10 years ago, 5 years ago? How long ago?
Well, so the business was initially, the first filing for the LLC was 2015.
Okay. 7 years.
So relatively, we're a young business, but I've been able to connect the dots and make it grow to what it is in a really quick, kind of a quick manner here. And I think that's what a lot of people kind of look at us and they're, even locally here, we'll have customers reach out and be like, hey, we'd love to use you guys, but we just feel like you've taken away from the smaller companies being a franchise and we can't support that. And I'm like, well, we're not a franchise. What are you talking about? And they're like, well, how on earth did you do this in that amount of time then? So, which is always, it's really cool to hear. But so, it started off with my ties to the previous company. I did a lot of hiring with them. That was kind of, I got pretty good at that, of recruiting. And then obviously I ran operations. So at one point I had 54 employees underneath me. We worked transmission lines. So pretty much going back to my original days there, I tried to be a sponge with everything. So I wanted to learn, even if I didn't necessarily like that particular part of it, I wanted to learn it. So there's a portion of that industry that's called work planning, right? So you got to go in, you got to look up, use global imaging systems, auditor sites, you got to find homeowners, talk to people. I hated that portion of the job. I just didn't like it. You're discussing, going over easements and all this stuff. And I was like, man, I just want to cut trees down.
Yeah.
But I kind of got pushed into that position, and that taught me a ton of skills. And then it kind of really got me introduced into some of the bigger conversations with the corporate entities. And then we, got involved with working with the state, and then started meeting like different arborists for different cities. So I started building up like kind of that professional side versus just going out and cutting trees down. So Started getting, part of some of those conversations, developing those skills. And then once Rogue started picking up a little bit of traction, it was mainly just residential. Residential is great for cash flow, but it's, in my opinion, it's tough, especially in our market, because if you only focus on residential, it's really hard to keep all of your employees working through your off season. I have a family. I want to be able to support my family 12 months a year. I don't want to work for somewhere where 3 to 4 months of the year I'm worrying, man, am I going to have 40 hours this week? So when it comes to attracting good employees, like from day one, I'm like, I have to find a way to fill that void. So I started pushing hard into state work. So we're a DOT contractor. State of Ohio, we have to follow federal restriction of the Indiana BAT. So our main ODOT work is from October to March. So I was like, okay, this is pretty neat. This is a good avenue, really pad our winter months. But obviously now dealing with state and the contracts, all your T's have to be crossed and I's dotted. So then it kind of goes back to, well, I got to have these contracts to keep good employees, but I got to have good employees to be able to fulfill these contracts. So that's obviously the first couple of years was a struggle. And then, you're dealing with engineers that's been dealing with some of these other companies for 25 years. So it's like, how am I going to break even into this side of it with all these previous relationships? And so that was a little bit tough. It took me, I would say probably 3 to 4 months. The first year, I never got a single call, not even a phone call to come bid something. So then I kind of took that on myself, started going out, literally going to different districts, knocking on doors, introducing myself. And it was really funny. I had this engineer come out and come out of his office, and he's like, "You drove 2 hours to just introduce yourself?" And I'm like, "Yeah, absolutely." I said, I want a chance, man, to get my foot in the door. And he goes, I'll send you the next bid I get. He goes, I'll let you come bid it out. So the first job I got, I bid it. I got it. And he actually called me and he was like, "Man, he's like, are you sure you can do it for this price?" And I'm like, "Yeah, absolutely." And did the project for him. He came out and literally he was just very impressed with what we did. And from there on, it was kind of like a wildfire with the state. So that engineer introduced us to this engineer. Now we're working across the whole state of Ohio, throughout the entire winter. So it just started to build, man. It was 2017 was my first year of real employees, right? So we had to go through the process of, going through the workers' comp and all the legalities of it and different insurances. And so 2017 was first year of real employees. And I look at it today, I think as of sitting right now, I've got 26.
Awesome. Dude, I want to unpack a couple of those things you said, because those are powerful. A lot of people need to probably go back and listen to that again. So as an entrepreneur, you brought up the point that, you're starting your business and it's, you've literally, you've already kind of quit everything else. So you kind of burned the boats, right? You're moving forward. And so then it's about building your contacts, getting the opportunity, getting your foot in the door. I mean, I can relate because my first sales job 16, 17 years ago was door-to-door sales for telecom. So we had to go door to door, man, and hit 40 doors a day. That was kind of the standard amount of doors you wanted to pull a day to get a couple of people that were interested. And then before that, even that, I worked for my dad's plumbing company. So I come from a blue collar background growing up. And so, but that's very important. So you do whatever it takes to succeed. You do whatever it takes to get that next contract, that next job or whatever. So that's powerful, because people need to realize that, like, even if we're incurring or approaching a small slowdown in the economy or anything like that, if you get out and hustle, you're still going to be okay. You just got to hustle. You can't rely on the phone ringing or referrals and things like that. You might need to do a little bit more marketing. And then the next thing that you said there was you're diversifying your clientele. So you're not just relying on residential work, which does slow down during the winter months because people stop kind of thinking about those types of things sometimes for 2 or 3 months, 4 months when it gets really cold. Depends on your market, your area of the country. And so, yeah, they're worried about Christmas. They're worried about New Year's. They're just dealing with everything else, and it's snowed in and things like that. And so, by diversifying your clientele and building up these government contracts, commercial contracts, things like that, a lot of bigger tree companies have gotten into plant healthcare because it's repeat recurring treatments and things like that. So if you just take those nuggets and just start expanding your services and the clientele of your services, you're going to be okay during those slow months. So a lot of good, powerful shares right there, man. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, absolutely. And you don't even really, a lot of people get intimidated by municipal contracts and anything related to the government as an entity in its whole. There's a lot of hurdles with that, right? So I understand, especially new companies, they're not going to go tackle that right off the bat. They ask questions in those contracts that, unless you've been in the game a while, you can't answer. Yeah. So you're calling people trying to get stuff figured out. But even it's so funny that just in our area, there's a lot of owner operator mom and pop type tree companies. And until we came into the picture, my head was right off the rip, we got to stay busy in the winter. So what can we do in the wintertime? Well, we can really emphasize and push pruning, right? So we should be pruning in the winter months. And you have these companies around us that they're like, oh, we don't do pruning. And I'm like, well, why? Like, why would you not? That's from a tree standpoint, from a perspective or I guess metrics, that's the most profitable crew you can have is your pruning crews. They're not running with $500,000 cranes. You don't have all this liability. You can send 2-man crews out, and from a net profit standpoint, they're the most profitable crew you can have. So, but then it goes back to, you have to be able to deliver that, right? So you got to have, being a certified arborist is huge in our organization. You need to be able to understand proper cuts, and you have to make that investment in your employee, which in turn is going to make that investment within your organization. So you have to be able to connect those dots of, kind of the value of what you're selling. And you need to be able to, your sales rep, he can't just be a sales rep. He has to be a through and through tree guy. He's got to know what he's talking about. And he's got, and that's how you sell yourself, right? You're not selling like a gimmick. You're selling your knowledge and yourself. So in my opinion, that's what a good sales rep is. He knows his product, the best that he possibly can, and he delivers it. So as soon as you start getting a good reputation, man, it kind of goes into the keeping up with the Joneses, and everybody then kind of wants to see your sign in their front yard.
Yeah, because people also probably want to protect and save their trees, not just remove them.
Yeah.
So if they find out that there's a company that knows how to deal with that, save trees, fertilize trees, inject trees, do all the things that's going to keep them looking good. So that's another thing that you mentioned too, invest in your employees. So when you get a guy out in the field, make sure he's just as knowledgeable as you over time. Sure, it takes a little bit of time, but invest in that person, spend some time with that person, train that person. And go back to one of the things you said before is really powerful too, is the branding play. So I guess I'm assuming the reason why people thought you were a franchise was because you have such good branding, good logoed and wrapped trucks, and just kind of a systemized process for your tree service company. People probably thought, man, I'm seeing this Road Tree Solutions truck all over the place. These guys are everywhere. And that's because you're all over the internet. You got your trucks wrapped, you're putting the signs up, so people just keep seeing it. And that professionalism, it tattoos in people's head, and they remember your company name. Plus it's a good name. It's not just Gary's Tree Service or, Corey's Tree Service. People are going to remember that and the look. So speak a little bit about that, like what your thought process was and like branding and marketing and making sure people remembered your brand and everything.
Yeah. So, going back to the early stages, it was, kind of when I came into the picture, the logo was kind of thought up, but it wasn't on anything, it wasn't on a truck. There wasn't nothing nowhere that told a customer or someone driving down the road who we were. So, my biggest thing was, and I look at Starbucks, right, from a coffee brand. So you see these people, they'll pass five coffee shops to get to a Starbucks, which is going to be a more guaranteed. It's probably more expensive than the 5 places that you pass. Mm-hmm. And it's always like, well, why is that? Is their coffee so much better, or is it the brand recognition of, I got to have my Starbucks? And they're in the I kind of call it like, they're like ranting fans, right? So like the rant of the business. So they kind of in the early stages, I'm like, why aren't service industries like that? Why do we not see businesses in the service industry pushing this brand. Like I don't see it anywhere. And you'll see like you said, Gary's service or last name, and it's like it kind of gets watered down. It's very easy to get lost. So right off the rip, man, I was like, I'm going to do this very, very bold. I want to make a statement with the brand. So it started off, and the brand has the design and everything's evolved over the years, and the wraps evolved. But I wanted something when we pulled onto a street, everybody knew exactly what that business was supposed to be doing. So, giant chainsaw, right? There's no question of what that company or what that truck's doing. So it even goes into, our biggest form of marketing that gets us the most phone calls, hands down, is yard signs. Without a question.
I was just going to ask you that next question. That's awesome. Okay. So signs.
Yeah. So I went to this marketing local company, right? And I was like, I want, actually, let me step it. So the first thing we ever did was a billboard, a full-size billboard. In my mind, I'm like, of course, why would that not work? So I went to this marketing company, and he's like, I've been doing this for years. I'll design you a billboard. I'm like, okay. So he designs it, sends it in. He sent it to me for obviously approval. I looked at it, was like good to go. So it gets put up, and I'm driving down the road, and I literally have to stop my truck, and I'm like reading this thing like a novel. And I call him up and I go, yeah, that's not going to work. And he's like, he starts questioning me. He's like, what do you mean? I'm like, that's not going to work, man. I said, people driving down the road don't have time to read paragraphs of what I said. We need, the logo was real small on it. So we ran that for 30 days, and I didn't get a single phone call related for the billboard. So I was like, yeah, that's not going to work for me anymore. So he's like, he kind of got a little bit cocky, and he was like, I'd like to see something better. I was like, okay, how about tree work in giant letters with the question mark behind, at the end of it?
Yeah, sure.
My logo, and then a phone number, and then the ISA logo. And he was like, are you serious? I'm like, that's what I want.
People don't have enough time to read a paragraph.
Yeah. I was like, look, man, like you have someone that poses a problem. Do you have tree work? Yeah, I do have tree work. Logo, phone number. It's that easy. So we started doing these yard signs, and it was funny because everyone, all these businesses have yard signs, but again, if the sun's hitting it, you can't see what it says, and you got to stop and look at it. So literally I did the exact same thing. Tree work, question mark, logo, phone number.
Perfect.
So we now, we go through on average, I go through about 150 to 175 yard signs a month. And it's so funny because you'll see all it takes is one. Yeah. You'll have yard side one go in. Within 3 weeks, there's 30 on that street. And that's what we've done pretty much every time we go into an area. That's what happens. And then, so you got the yard sign, you've got all these trucks in the driveway or out on the road, people's passing. So it's very easy for the brand recognition. And especially if we're trying to push into a new area, we've got some really neat commercials that we've had made.
I like those. The ones on your YouTube channel, on your website.
Yep. Yeah. Yep. So they're, in my opinion, there's, the guys that do those, he's a buddy of mine that I graduated high school with. They are incredible. But so, we'll tie those into different television programs. So it's that constant, marketing is not, I see these individuals get stuck in one rhythm of it, and they're like, and they'll beat that horse until it's dead. And I'm like, guys, it's a shotgun effect. You got to be throwing stuff from all angles. And all it takes is just that little logo, like constantly keep that logo in people's minds. So, from marketing, I don't want to jump ahead of you or anything, but there's so many different things that go into it, whether it's, you pick a baseball team, a local youth baseball team, and now your shirt's got those on it. And then the parents, they might need work at their house, or they're the CEO of your local, another local business, and hey, we need pruning. So all those things just constantly tie into each other. But once it works, it works.
Yeah, that's incredible, man. So it's really, you're doing the marketing, but not only are you just trying to get leads, you're trying to tattoo that brand in everybody's head locally so they remember to call Rogue Tree Solutions next time they need anything. And so we always, suggest, all of those things, the signs, the branding, the trucks, your website kind of ties in with all that too, because people are ultimately always going to end up on the website at some point. Your Google business listing has reviews out the wazoo, just, 50, 100, 200 Google reviews on there. Google paid ads, retargeting all over social. So when somebody lands on your website, they're going to see you over and over again when they log into social. So there's all these different things. Billboard, you mentioned billboard. A lot of some of our clients have those 2 or 3 billboards or whatnot. So that's good for brand recognition. But again, it's got to be a quick, simple message. Call if you need help, and that's pretty much it. And the fact that you're using yard signs like that, that's very good, because when you're in a neighborhood, the neighbors already just in their head perceive that this is a trusted tree company. One of the neighbors is using this tree company, so hey, if I see their sign, I'm going to go ahead and give them a call. That way it's still there even after the truck leaves. So that impression, and one of the things I wanted to talk about too is impressions, is how many people see your business over and over and over and over again, whether they're on the road, they see a billboard, whether they're in the neighborhood, they see a yard sign. Maybe you've dipped your toe in the water with direct mail. Same thing. They open their mailbox, they see Rogue Tree Solutions. Everywhere they look, they see you guys, and that just goes a long way for your marketing. In a 5-year period, you can get so much further if you concentrate on the branding side of it just as much as the marketing. Because I see a lot of tree companies, they get stuck in that hamster wheel of buying leads from Home Advisor or Thumbtack or Angie's List or whatever. And the thing is, there's just no branding involved there, because when people go to those platforms and submit their information, they don't know what 5 tree companies are going to be calling them. They just know somebody's going to be calling them. And then again, it goes back to what you said about Starbucks. So people will go and drive a lot farther to go pay for a $5 cup of coffee instead of a $2 cup of coffee at ones that they've already passed. Same thing with your brand. If your brand is out there, it's the perceived professional brand in the local area, they won't really question the price as much, and they will move forward with the work because you guys have got such a stellar reputation. So lots of good shares there, man. And so after you started getting all this going, and you started kind of building the blaze, and the fires kind of growing, you're starting to build your business. What did you guys maybe get up to as far as like your crews? And so you got probably crews doing commercial, crew doing residential or whatnot. So it's pretty much the signs, the truck wraps. Looks like your website looks really good. What other things maybe are you doing today?
I mean, the biggest thing too, all of that's great, but you have to deliver an outstanding product. So it doesn't matter how good of branding and marketing you do. If your product isn't superior, you're honestly, you're wasting your time. So your product, number one, your product has to be good, right? You have to, you kind of have to be the pinnacle of your area within the industry. So you've got to be, you've got to stand out with your reputation, and then the branding, obviously, in my opinion, comes second. So it doesn't really matter how good your branding is if you don't have a product to match. You're kind of wasting your time.
Yeah, so negative news spreads faster than positive news, I think, is the old
absolutely
saying, right?
So I tell you when I started noticing, this was kind of cool. When I started noticing, it was probably early 2019. I would be at, a local, store, whatever it was, so, local bar, and I'd see someone walk in wearing a Rogue shirt.
Okay.
Someone that I've never been hired. And I'm like, and then you're driving on the road and you see a car with a Rogue bumper sticker or Rogue stick. And I'm like, man, this is kind of cool. Like, we're gaining some traction in the area. So going back to the growth aspect. So 2019, I had 21 employees. At the time, my business partner he was trying to run the crews. Started running into some serious hurdles with that. And everyone says, partners in business can be very tough. And I'll be the first to say it can be tough, but it comes with, you have to be 100% honest with one another. Can't leave stuff on, everything, put it on the table at the end of the day. And, two human beings that can detach from the situation, they'll figure anything out. So kind of got to a point where I was like, look, man, this kind of running into some issues here. We need to get somebody else in this position. So we did that. And then 2020 was a good year. But 2020, I finally was able to slow down enough to really start diving back into the business. And sales were going up, every year our sales were going up and up. And then 2020, I was like, well, we're not making any more money. So our net profits were actually starting to go down. So I almost got caught up into the machine, and the ball was rolling too fast for us to actually get our hands on it. So at the end of 2020, I made some pretty big decisions, choices. I actually dropped the business from 21 guys all the way back down to 11. Came with some serious hurdles, right? We almost cut in half. And then I got rid of majority of the management team. And I started doing everything myself, which was very tough because I had a full plate already. So I went to pretty much back to working 7 days a week. I had to work 8 if I had another day. And then I started rebuilding. And that was the best thing that the organization and the brand that we ever could have done. I built it. Like I said, I'm back up to 26 employees today, good employees.
Right.
Net profits were the highest we've ever been on a profit standpoint. And our product is back to where we started, 2019, it got so big, our product actually, it started to get tarnished a little bit. It started going downhill. And I started seeing it on my corporate properties. And then soon as that happened is when I was like, stuff's got to change immediately.
Yeah, that's your repeat business, your contract.
Yeah, I was like, we have to make changes literally immediately. So we did. And from there on, it was okay. And I'll be honest, man, my view on business was, I guess on sales and everything was a little bit wrong. We got to get more sales. We got to get more sales. We got to get more sales. And we were doing so. But if your retention's not any better, then honestly, there's no point of more sales. Like, and for a small business standpoint, obviously on a large scale, if you're trying to gain, equity within the banks and, you're trying to do these different things, you need that growth in sales. But from a small business standpoint, I'm like, man, why am I adding all this extra exposure, which is extra liability, for no extra return? Like, it doesn't make any sense.
Right. Just breaking even with that segment of
yeah. And then you're just opening the doors for, the liability. That's obviously in our industry is huge. So, knock on wood, we've yet to have an OSHA recordable since business has been started. But we were heading down the path that I didn't want to see the outcome. So it came, like I said, definitely came with some hard and tough decisions. And then it kind of overloaded my lap for a while. But a crucial point that we did was I brought on, he's not an owner, but he's kind of my right-hand man at this point. My older brother, when he was in the service, he was in 9th Wing Special Operations, got out of the military, became an arborist, got a bachelor's degree in environmental science. He actually went to work for the same company that I started at, and he had 200 some guys under him there. They had a couple issues on dollars and cents. And he called me one day and was like, yeah, I'm not doing this no more. Where do you want me? And I started laughing. I'm like, what, you ain't leaving there? You know what I mean? Like, why would you
following the footsteps, huh?
Yeah. And I had, at that time, I think I only had like 3 real employees. I'm like, man, we're like small time, man. This isn't going to, like, I don't think you're going to like this. And he's not, he had never sold anything in his life. He wasn't a salesman, and, but he's highly intelligent, and, he's been in the industry. He's good at what he does. And for me, it was, I could trust him with everything I own. So, bringing him on was an instrumental, in the success of the business. So he's actually my sales manager, but he is a lot more than that in terms of, he helps with the camaraderie of the guys and, working through some of those complicated bids and decisions. So he was instrumental bringing him in. And like I said, man, it was, I talk to people all the time, and I'm like, your infrastructure of the machine has to be solid before you start reaching for the stars. Because if it's not, you're going to get to the star. If your hustle game's strong, you'll get to those stars every single time.
Yeah.
But once you get there and you look around, and if your infrastructure is not right, you're going to collapse. And all it takes is one bad injury or one bad liability, and you're in a real tough situation to get out of.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. Bringing your brother on board. I mean, being in the military gives you that discipline. Tell him thank you for his service and everything else. That's incredible, because people like that have got discipline. They've got a good ethics and all that stuff. So he's going to be a good fit, and especially working with family. I mean, if you can trust them, you can't trust anybody more than family typically. So I mean, most families. You've seen other families too that maybe don't go that route. But a couple other things you said too is don't be afraid to go back and look at the numbers. And if you're not profitable, you got to change some stuff up, because nobody's in business to break even or whatever. So a lot of times that's raising prices. Sometimes that is, implementing this or that. Sometimes that's getting rid of employees that really aren't pulling their weight, or things that maybe just aren't as profitable segments of your business. So you went through all of that, kind of dialed in that. One thing I forgot to kind of touch on is the branding and marketing play. That also probably attracts more local employees and talent too, right? Because they see your company is on the up and up, one of the bigger, good, reputable tree companies. They're going places, they're doing stuff. I really want to work for this company. Look how good their trucks look. I want to be represented like that. Can you speak a little bit to that? Does that help kind of bring on more employees and retain them a little bit more?
It does. So people want to be part of something, man, especially part of something that works and part of something that's good. So, we just had I had a safety meeting last week with the whole organization, and went through about an hour and a half meeting. It was really, really good and structured. And we talked a lot of things. And the biggest thing, man, is culture, right? So you having a good brand and a good product, all that's great. But if your business is lacking culture, it's something that I think is vital when retaining good employees. So since I've been in business, I've yet to lose an employee to another tree company. And I wear that hat pretty strongly, man, because that is huge in this industry.
That speaks volumes. Yeah,
it does. So we've obviously had people leave. I had one of my favorite. I got a favorite employee. He was awesome. He went 101st Airborne Division in the military. Right. I'm never going to fault somebody for wanting to chase their dream. So I had guys go to dental school. I had a guy last year go to dental school. So all these things, like, yeah, I want my employees to better themselves, whether that's with me or somebody else. But yeah, as of now, I've yet to lose one to another tree company. So with that, with your culture there's a lot that comes with that, right? So we are a small business. We run things very family oriented. If we have problems, we deal with them just like they're my brothers. No matter, and that a lot of times, who knows which direction that's going to go.
No, I mean, it's family. That you're not closer to anybody else than family, right?
So but with that though is right, so everyone's you got this buddy mentality, which is great, but people that can be tough for individuals, right? And there's a real fine line there. So you can't let someone, because they're your buddy, dip below the standard. And I see that happen 24/7 in business. Is you have this guy that gets into a leadership role or a management role, and he's got a buddy here, a buddy there. Well, next thing you know, the buddy who was a really good employee, they start dipping below the standard. And it starts with, well, maybe I'm 5 minutes late. Well, maybe I'm 10 minutes late. Well, then that slowly just starts developing into the new standard, which you now infect your entire organization with that. So, when it's 7:00 start time, we all have a standard to follow. So I think that's huge. So culture, a lot of times can get confusing, because you do you have that friend-ish mentality when it comes to your employees. But you have to keep the standard, and you have to hold that standard. And I've lost friends over it, right? Like I've had buddies that I've hired and I've fired because they didn't meet the standard, and then they're no longer friends. Well,
you can't compromise the product that we're going to deliver. Yeah.
Yeah. And businessman is so much more than yourself, right? So I don't look at anything as, I'm doing that. Yeah. Obviously I like to make a good living for myself and my family, but I've got 26 mouths, families to feed. And that's how I look at every decision I make. So there's not one individual, including myself, that's worth me compromising my brand, which is responsible for feeding all of these people's families. So that's when I make a decision, it's the team as a whole and what's best for the brand as a whole. And I try to leave the emotions out of it within myself. So with that culture though, man, there's a lot that goes into building a good culture. And I could literally talk for hours on culture itself, but some of the little things that we do, we've got next week and we got a big event coming up here. We sponsor, there's a huge country festival every year that comes right down the road from us. We're a prime sponsor of it. So we'll sponsor these things, we take all the employees, their families, and we just, honestly, we party for 2-3 days. It happens twice each summer. So little things like that, every year, every fourth quarter, we do a company trip, whether it's hog hunting in Tennessee, partying in Nashville. We do things like that. Obviously, there's some individuals in our organization that it's not for them. Hey, that's fine. They stay out, but majority of everyone participates, and it just kind of ties that in, man, of kind of we're all in this together. And if the business is succeeding and if it's winning, everybody's going to win. So, we talked about that in that meeting this past week is, when the business and the profitability is good and everyone's making money, the attitude of your organization shouldn't be, oh, the boss is making all this money. What are we doing?
Yeah.
The attitude needs to be, we're all winning, fellas. Cause I've never heard of a business that's struggling financially that's fun to work for. Right. So you start making all these changes, and a lot of times they're negative to the employees. They're working longer hours. Their pay might be getting cut. They're not getting, percentage up on their 401k. So all these things kind of tie into, you need a good product to sell. You need to sell it for the best price that you can. And all of us is going to win at the end of the day.
That's awesome, man. And so the customer, the employee culture, the company culture, one good way, you may already have this in place, one great way to do that, something you can always just go, well, this is part of is put together a core values document. These are our 8 things that we stand for in our business. And that way there's no question. So then, like you said, when you get into a situation with a friend or hell, even if it's a family member, we don't compromise our product. So these are our core values right here. And this is what we follow. So it's not just you coming in with an opinion. It's this is our company's core values on the sheet. And so you can always reference that. And even customers like to see that a company has core values. It kind of goes along with the whole marketing thing too. And then also a mission statement. You can have one of each. And so we have that in our business too. And so that's how our internal team operates. Like, these are our core values, customer first, and things like that. So all of that kind of goes a long way with your culture. And then there's no questioning like, well, what about this? What about that? It's like, well, this is part of our core values. This is what we stand for, et cetera. So that really, really helps too. So that's awesome, man. Great shares there about your, traveling and doing sponsored events locally. Cause those types of things, that's just more impressions for your business too, right? It's company culture, but it's also impressions and people seeing you at that country event, that festival. So all that stuff ties together, right? It just keeps on putting you out there. It's just like a viral, everybody sees you.
It is, man. And it's doing the little things a little bit beyond too. So a quick story that kind of goes into what the little things can get you in business and even in life is, there was a local, it was a high school hockey team. They had a car wash set up, and my work truck is a big dually. It's wrapped bumper to bumper.
Can't mistake it.
It was can't mistake it, covered in mud. And it was I just had the truck wrapped. This was, I want to say maybe this was 2017, 2018, somewhere in there. I pulled into this car wash and these kids' jaws just dropped. And because this thing was filthy. So they start washing on it. And they're like, hey, we're taking donations. I don't remember how much cash I gave them. It was a healthy chunk of money that I handed to them. Well, fast forward like 3 months. So Rayco, everyone that is listening in this industry probably knows who Rayco is. Their headquarters is right here in our backyard. So we get a call from Rayco that they want to talk to me in their boardroom. I'm like, okay, so dude, I'm literally I go off of a job site. I go off of a job site. I walk into this room. Did I lose you?
No, I'm here.
Okay. I lost the picture for some reason.
Oh, okay. It's you still look fine on my end.
Okay. So sorry about that.
It's okay.
Walk into into this room, sit down with everybody, and there was an individual there. He started asking me a few questions relating to safety, relating to the industry itself. He kind of gives a thumbs up and walks out of the room. I look over, the guys that make our videos and our website, they're also in the room. This woman walks in and she's like, hi. So she's from Moorbark, which Moorbark purchased Rayco right around this time period. So she's like, we want to use Rogue as kind of our company that runs any prototypes, does all of our film work. If we have anything new that we want to push into the market, we want to send them out on your cruise. We'll have the film guys follow them. And I'm like, well, this is kind of crazy, right? Like Moorbark is a humongous company. Rayco is a large company. Like, why on earth do they want to use us? Like, that's where I couldn't even understand.
And this all seeded from you giving a fat tip at the car wash.
It really did. So I asked, I was like, well, how do you guys how do you even know about us? Right. And the one Rayco, the woman at Rayco at the time was like, she goes, well, obviously we've seen your brand everywhere. We've seen your trucks, but she's like, my son was working at this car wash and
there you go.
He comes home ranting about this Rogue truck. So she's like, we got online. She's like, we started looking around, and she was the marketer, right? She did marketing for Rayco. So all this stuff kind of played in, and to this day, we still we do a lot. If you go to Moorbark's website, that's our primary chippers and stump grinders Rayco's are stump grinders, but we use their equipment. And if you go to their website, you can see, it's mainly Rogue guys rocking their equipment. So it's so, you look at that, at that time I had a couple chippers, and it's like, well, why on earth would you use us? Like, why pick us?
Well, that's generosity, man. Generosity goes a long way. Giving brings back to you tenfold a lot of times. You know what I'm saying? So just by you doing that day, again, there you go. You've got all these people out there raving and ranting about Rogue Tree Solutions. And that's how it happens, right? That's how you gain, and then you do something for a neighbor for free. You do something for somebody as a generous thing, a veteran perhaps, or whatever the case may be. Everybody's going to rant and rave about your company. So you got these salespeople, saleswomen all over your town talking about your company. And I mean, that's how you do it too. It's free word of mouth doing things like that. So sometimes you're not getting paid, maybe right there on the moment, or you're being generous and giving a big tip or something, and it comes back tenfold, right?
So every time. Yeah. And it's being part, man, of the, like now, we don't have to be part of the local parades. We don't have to do those things anymore, right? Our sizes, and I had someone this year, they're like, dude, why do you still do these? And it's like, well, what do you mean? Like, it's funny. Our local parade, it is a huge one. It takes about an hour and 40 minutes from front to back.
So what would you say, 70% of people in your town are there?
Yeah, I would say probably a higher percentage, to be honest with you.
So that's a perfect place to be, right?
And every year, it started off with just candy. And then it went from the one year I had just picked up an order of company shirts. They're similar to the one I'm wearing now. We ran out of candy, and I'm like, I don't have I had a mile left of the parade. I'm like, guys, what do we? So we start throwing t-shirts out of the front vehicle, which was my dolly. So now, fast forward to now, I still have people every year that sit in the same spot, and they walk up to the truck and they're like, you got my shirt? And they get them every single year. So it's like you build these raving fans, man, that last year I bought, I don't know, maybe 30 small bottles. Obviously, you can see behind me, I'm a big bourbon enthusiast. And I bought all these bottles of bourbon, the real small ones. And I started handing those out to people that stood out to me as either really good customers or really good supporters of the brand. So then that turned into even more of this buzz, right? It's just this buzz of the brand itself. So, and then I don't know, man, it's crazy. And I'm very blessed to have what we have. And it's just fun, man. It's a business and it's work, but it's fun to be a part of.
Well, you're doing it right, man. I appreciate you sharing all this. I want to be respectful of your time. I know we're kind of getting into the time thing here too. And so you've done all of this in a 6-7 year time period. And that's amazing. And it shows that you're out there hustling, you're doing the business right, generosity reciprocates and comes back to you, all of these things. So a lot of powerful shares that people can take back to their business, their hometown, their area, to do the same and similar things. If a tree service company is just getting started out and they're in that grit and grind mode to get that business launched and off the ground, kind of like you guys were when you first started, what kind of like just quick tips or something, maybe just a couple of minutes, like what would you suggest, or what would you give them as encouragement to just keep going, get that business going? If it's something that you really want to do, you got to just push forward. What would kind of get them going and get off the ground? What are some things you can give them maybe to do that?
Yeah, I think the biggest one, kind of majority of tree guys, we're all cut from the same cloth most of the time. Leave your ego beside, leave it at home, right? So ask questions, call a local, maybe not in your direct area, call around and don't be afraid to ask questions. The biggest thing is I see these guys get stuck in stuck in their ways, if that's what you want to say. And they do the same thing over and over and over. And they're doing it for 15 years and they're still the exact same size that they were from from their first year, which is fine. Maybe that's what they want, right? Absolutely. That's fine. But you have a lot of the individuals that first off, you have to ask yourself, why am I doing this and what is it for? I think that's a huge question that people might think about it, but they don't actually sit down and analyze what that means and then make a plan that actually matches that answer. So if your goal is, I just want to make some side money and that's what my objective is, then it doesn't take much to go out and do that. But if you're looking at sustainability and you want a long-term plan and a business that's going to provide for maybe generations or your generation, and then provide for other individuals, like figure out what you have to do and then obviously execute. So a big thing too is that I see is a lot of times you have to go backwards before you can go forwards. And what I mean mainly from that is from a financial standpoint of the owner of the company. You get these guys that they're like, well, I need to make this. I think it was the first 4 years of the business, every employee I had made more money than I did hourly. At the time I was able, my house was paid for at the time, my first house that I had. So I was able to do that. I did have a kid at home, but I was pretty financially responsible. And I put every dime I had back into the business. So you got to be able to do that. Establish relationship with good accountants is huge. Understanding the laws, and especially tax law, good accountant, good attorney, those two, it's great to have those resources, man, when it comes to legal questions. Other than that, man, it's literally roll your sleeves up and get ready to hustle 7 days a week.
How bad do you want it? Yeah.
How bad do you want it? Yeah. Because if your mindset isn't, it's funny the amount of people you meet in business that they're like, oh man, I'm going to start a business. And, the first year or two, I might work 40 hours, but after that, it's not like that. And I've never met a successful business owner. I don't care if they're 70 years old, they're still hustling.
What is the old saying too? It's business owners and entrepreneurs are willing to work 80 hours a week to avoid the 40-hour-a-week job
for somebody else.
That's really the way it boils down. Right?
It is. Yep. Yeah. Get ready to hustle, and you got to have strong support outside of the business, man. If you have a family that they need you there at 3 o'clock every day, and it's probably not going to work. You have to make sacrifices, and a lot of time, man, your family feels the end of that, right? So, which is tough. And I look kind of getting a little bit older now and look at all the sacrifices with my first son and the years that I didn't see him because I was doing this. So there's times that I kind of look back, I'm like, man, I wish I'd have done this and this a little bit different and tried to manage this time better this way than that. But bottom line is, man, is you got to be hungry and you got to hustle.
Amazing share, man. Well, you're building a legacy for your son. I'm not sure if you have more, but yeah, just doing amazing work, man. Amazing shares today. Lots of things people can take back to their market. So I want to thank you so much for your time today, man, and sharing everything that you have, about business and what you've learned and everything else. And so again, guys, this is Corey Parsons, president of Rogue Tree Solutions in Ohio. And thanks so much for watching today. Again, if you're on the YouTube channel, go ahead and like and subscribe to our channel. If you're on the podcast, like and subscribe to our podcast. Got more expert interviews coming up soon and marketing tips, tricks, and hacks. And again, this is Wesley Smith with Tree Service Marketing Profits Podcast. Till next time, we'll talk to you then.
Appreciate you.